The White House says it plans to keep fighting for voting rights reform after Senate Democrats yesterday failed to break a GOP filibuster on legislation that combines key parts of both the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. The bills would, among other things, expand voting access and make Election Day a national holiday. Joining us now are Mark Glennon, executive editor and founder of WirePoints, Chantal Grant, the founder of Level Up and Vote, and Ami Gandhi, senior counsel with the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Thanks to all three of you for joining us. Ami Gandhi, let's start with you, please. How will the defeat of these bills affect voters?
You know, voting rights activists, including folks from nonpartisan organizations like the one I work for, are disappointed but not surprised. We weren't counting on the passage of federal voting rights legislation during this important election year. It's a huge disappointment that the federal legislators didn't step in to address the crushing trend that we've seen of voter suppression in states across the country. But through strong community-based programs like the Nonpartisan Election Protection Hotline, 866 Our Vote, we still have a path forward to try to work with the landscape that we have so that every eligible voter who wants to have their voice heard this year still can.
Mark Glennon, what issues do you have with both of these bills?
What crushing voter suppression have we had? This was an unprecedented attempt to federalize, to nationalize the election process by cementing into place a long list of the very things that have caused Americans to lose confidence in the election process. We've got Gallup polls that 60% of Americans, cutting across party lines, don't trust the process because of some of those emergency measures that were put in place in 2020. And now this bill would have locked those into place, things like restrictions on voter ID, which almost everybody supports, restrictions on limiting ballot harvesting, the state's ability to cleanse the voter rolls of illegal voters. It's a long list of things like that, all designed to favor the Democratic Party. This was a deliberate attempt to try to nationalize the process, to lock in things that favor Democrats that Americans don't want.
Chantal Grant, what does the inability of the federal government to pass these laws say about the importance of getting people organized locally for voter access?
Absolutely. This national fight is just something that we have to use as an example, right? That we have to fight locally. Thank God in Illinois, right? We're lucky to have strong voter protection laws. And I think it's important that we have to be able to encourage other states to do the same, and we have to engage with other people to make sure that they understand that although we lost the fight currently on a federal level, we can still fight locally, and we should encourage other states to do the same.
Now, Chantal just said that, here in Illinois, we have lots of access for voting and access to vote. But Mark, if you believe that this is the Democrats' attempt to federalize the process, why should voting legislation be left to the states?
Because we've always done it that way, and because local voters have to be able to select their own rules so that we don't have one party at the federal level trying to favor themselves. Look, there's no suppression at the local level. What are we saying here? That in the past elections that they were invalid because of voter suppression? That you haven't lost anything at the federal level. The Supreme Court restricts discriminatory rules of any kind, if the states try to do it, that are discriminatory against any minority. All that remains. It's still there. States are acting, many are after 2020, to try to revise the rules that were put in place to allow them to check voter IDs and do all the other things to assure a valid election that people have confidence in. And they want to do that. They need to do it. And there's nothing discriminatory about that. The Supreme Court and other statutes that are on the book will make sure that that happens.
Ami, what is your response to that? Why should there be federal voting rights legislation?
In Illinois, we have a bipartisan tradition, actually, of innovations to our election systems. Automatic voter registration was passed on a unanimous bipartisan basis. The implementation has been getting stronger over time, thankfully. We have other common sense aspects of the voting system: vote by mail without undue restrictions, election day registration, the list goes on. And people of all backgrounds and all political affiliations take advantage of these rights, as everyone should if they're eligible to vote. It's simply not credible to say that all eligible voters have fair access. We get a number of calls every single election to 866 our vote, especially from disenfranchised community members who are trying to vote and are stymied by the complicated process. Now, there are election officials, particularly you'll find in places like Illinois, who want to do the right thing, who want to help a voter who's facing an unfair barrier. But we have to be vigilant. If even some number of voters of color or voters at large are turned away from the polls, that is too many. We need federal legislation to make sure that the good practices that are happening in places like Illinois to improve our election system are not an anomaly. Why should it be that just across the state border in Indiana, we see some of the most restrictive laws in the country, where barely any categories of people are allowed to vote by mail, where the polling places close unduly early? We don't need that kind of variation when we know that there are better ways to manage our elections.
To that end, though, what more could be done to bolster voting access in Illinois or any other state for that matter? Chantal?
We have to talk to our legislators, right? First, people power, like I mentioned before, is important. We have to be the power. We have to tell others about what's going on, and we have to show up. We have to show up in numbers, and we have to show our elected officials that we care about this, right? And so once we start mobilizing on grand levels, right, locally, it will show federally as well. And I think this is important, and we have to encourage this throughout the nation.
And before we let you go, Chantal, I'll give you the last word. What are your next steps? What are your plans going forward in about 15 seconds?
Yeah, next steps absolutely, again, will be to encourage mobilize and encourage other organizations around the parameter of voter protection laws locally, and then spread out to nationally to other states.
Okay. Chantal Grant, Ami Gandhi, and Mark Glennon, that's where we'll have to leave it. Thanks to all three of you for joining us.
Thank you.